Survivor's ready.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now would be the time to do so.
The queen stays queen.
You said Russell Feathers.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to calamity. We have ripe bananas all the time.
Dude, my prize isn't even $1 million. My prize was that I fell in love in this game. Love at first sight. Her name is Candace.
You officially go down as the dumbest survivor ever.
Welcome to Not Game, All Personal. Hey, we are a Survivor podcast here to talk about all things Survivor, more specifically the finale of Survivor 45. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Nathan.
That's all. So you
How
texted
you
me.
doing?
You texted me today.
I did text you today.
That you were basically setting yourself up to be very disappointed over
Yep.
any other outcome other than D winning. So you must be
Yeah.
feeling pretty good.
I feel phenomenal. I could not be more happy. They were making me nervous.
Yeah.
I would compare it to, and I don't know if I did when I texted you, but it was very similar to how I felt about Jesse in season 43 going into that finale, where it's just like, this person to me is just clearly the best player in the game. And I don't see a reason that they shouldn't win the game other than not making it there. And so that one was a disappointment, obviously, but man, I'm very happy with the outcome of this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easily the most satisfying winner of the new era. Would you argue with that?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. From I think like multiple aspects, I think because I think the frustrating thing that we've described the past few years is they've tried really hard to sneak in a winner,
Mhm.
for people like us who try to read in way too much to everything. So I think like for them to gain the element of surprise, they kind of lose us with this secret winner now of like, oh, you didn't
Mhm.
see this coming, and unfortunately, I think it really has downplayed some people's games like Erica and Marianne, where it's like,
Mhm. I think so
y-
too.
like I really enjoy their games, but not in the same way as D because we saw D's game from the start, early on. I think once the season started rolling, we recognized, okay, this is someone who could win the game, and it only got stronger and stronger. So I think it's satisfying. I think that's why a lot of people are so happy right now, is because it matches what we actually saw on TV, which hasn't happened the past few seasons.
Yeah, and like we've always said, if you get the votes, you deserve to win. But sometimes you just want that person who's like the front runner, who was running the game clearly in a lot of ways, and who is winning challenges and just is like the full package. You want that person to win. Otherwise, it's like, what are we doing here? If it's always the random person who people just feel like shouldn't win, then there's no payoff. You need every once in a while to have that person where it's like very clearly deserved to win and got the votes and did what they needed to do.
Yep, I completely agree. So if you're listening and haven't watched the finale, we just spoiled the whole thing because D won.
Yes.
The final vote was, I think Austin got 3 votes. I should have had
Mhm.
this pulled up right
5
to
to
go.
3.
5-3. Okay. Jeff read it very strategically. We were gearing up towards every other until she just took the last ones, which that's what you gotta do if you want suspense. And the 3 votes for Austin were Drew, makes sense. Bruce, and then Kendra, which kind of felt like a wild card, but I think that adds up to who Kendra is. A lot of Kendra
Yeah.
moments tonight.
I was very surprised, and she seemed to be very excited to be there. Yeah, she was just a lot tonight. I'm not gonna lie. But hey, it worked, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Bruce was interesting because I feel like he just didn't talk. Like, I feel like he had something during the like wrap up reunion type
Mhm.
thing. Other
Yeah,
than that, I don't think he asked a question.
he did not.
It just was a very different Bruce than I expected to see, and I wonder if it like the response to his game and the response to everybody wanting to get him out just messed him up a little bit, which would be understandable, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he did talk about how shocked he was getting the Ponderosa, and just kind of hearing that response and like feedback. So I think
Mhm.
there is that chance. I mean, there's also, obviously they edit it down So like there could have been more Bruce content that was cut, or he could have asked a question and maybe it just wasn't, I don't know, because these final tribals obviously go a lot longer than what we see.
Yeah, I was seeing the like classic like, oh, why didn't production give Jake more time to talk? It's like, dude, I'm sure he talked plenty. It's just we didn't care to hear it. Like
I have
they
no
told
doubt
us the
that Jake
story
got
they
all
needed
his
to.
words in. No,
They gave
no.
him some stuff to say early on, and then it just shifted. Like he said, and he could have been covering his tracks, but he could
Hmm.
tell towards the end that it was going to be between Austin and D, and so the final tribal shifted that way as well, which I loved.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I think, and there was a moment I think Drew pointed out to Jake where it's like, Jake, you're underselling your game here, and I almost felt like Jake had a lot more he could have said and could have done in that final tribal. I think like he knew that he didn't have a chance. I think we knew, but I don't think going into it it was actually that lopsided because I think like this whole episode felt like I don't know. We saw a lot of Jake in this episode,
Hmm.
mostly because a lot of the attempted moves and the immunity challenge, like he had a large part in those kind of
Hmm.
storylines. But I don't know. Like going into Final Tribal, like I was more kind of like, yes, I think D's the front runner, but like honestly, I think every single one of them has something here, and so I was definitely disappointed in his Final Tribal performance due to all that.
Yeah, I don't know, because one thing that stood out to me, I think it was when they were doing the like, oh, let's remember past house guest or not house guests, past mates,
Wow.
and then hey, man, it's Big Brother season,
Too
obviously.
busy watching the reindeer games.
I haven't started it yet. I need to. It's the finale's tomorrow.
It's not bad.
But
It's not
he was
bad.
talking. That's what I've heard. But Drew was talking about Jake specifically, and was like, Jake has had the hardest path here, and that was an interesting thing. And I don't know if I fully agree with it, just because I feel like Jake's path was to constantly try to do things, and none of them actually work. Like he didn't really like
Yeah.
do like yes he I just checked his voting history, and like for the most part he voted correctly. He was in the numbers and people were pulling him in as a number. But and yes, he was like the second option to go every week. But the reason that he stayed wasn't because to me it was because he was less of a threat than the person that actually got voted out. Like it was one of those situations. And it's always hard for me to give credit when your value is being less of a threat, and like there's an intentional less of a threat and there's an unintentional less of a threat, and I feel like his was an
Sure.
unintentional less of a threat. I don't think he was intentionally trying to lower his threat level. I think that's just how threatening he was. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a thought that I had and wanted to get your take on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When Drew said that, I just don't think that's ever true that like someone has an easier or harder path because they all start from the starting line, right? Like they all
Hmm.
enter this game as strangers. The only time someone has a harder path is if it's like a lopsided like all-star season or something, right? And you got more
Hmm.
connections. Like that's the only way that this could be more in your favor. I think to say that like D and Austin had an easier path, it's like no, they just took advantage of like those early days and then
Hmm.
made the most of like you know what I mean? Like did they have an easier way to get to the end? Perhaps, but that's cuz they did more. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
Jake's harder path, quote unquote, was his own doing. So, and yeah, I completely agree. Like I think it is a strategic move to like lower your threat level, get to the end, blah blah blah, but like I think I pointed this out before, but like the fact that he survived so many votes while he was the backup plan, I don't think many of those were because of him. I think it just that's kind of how people landed, right? They're like, oh, let's vote for Jake. Oh, let's just have him be the backup plan. Actually, vote for this person, right? It wasn't because he had a conversation with someone. It
Hmm.
wasn't because he strategically got them to not vote for him. It was all out of his control, and I think that's the difference. I think like
Hmm.
yes, it's impressive if you survive all these votes, but like was that because of your gameplay or was that because of D's gameplay? And it was because of D's most of the time.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. Like he he had we've seen juries give that the win to somebody who we feel is less deserving just because of how they frame it and how they're perceived by the jury. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there was a path for Jake to win it. So I would agree with you there. I think it would have taken a catastrophe from Austin and D, and almost them to like not be able to distinguish their games at all. So then the vote for them is split, and then Jake wins a couple because they're just doing so poorly.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a challenge, but I know they have to make it seem like he has a chance, especially just for entertainment purposes.
Right.
But for some of the things that they were saying, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that could very well be it right there, and maybe that's what I'm falling for is, the producers needing me to go into Final Tribal, viewing it as an equal chance, so that's why we got more confessionals this episode from him, because I'm not kidding. There were moments I said out loud to the group I was watching, I was like, guys, we need to prepare ourselves because Jake might win. I don't think he will, but like. It's not a 0% chance based off of, what I'm seeing right now.
Man, if D lost to anybody, I would have been furious coming onto this podcast. If D lost to Jake in that final 3,
Yeah.
I would have lost it. I really would have. That would have
Yeah.
made me so upset.
Let's talk a little bit about I feel like we can just talk about both of them, the D and Austin of Final Tribal, which
Yeah.
was one of the more fascinating back and forths I think we've ever seen.
I don't know if we've ever seen like the one of them talks, the other one talks, and the other person's like, "Wait, well, what about this?" And then they're like, "Wait," like there was like 3 or 4 back and forths there.
Yeah.
Just like, and towards the end, I feel like they weren't really saying much, but they were really fighting for like, no, I did this, and you like you did this, which was cool. Yeah, I loved it.
And for the most part, I felt like they were both giving up pretty valid points. Obviously, I think D had the upper hand, which shows with the final votes. But like the things that Austin was saying, like there were times where I can't think of a specific example, but like there's a certain move that I just credited to D. But then the way he's talking, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like he actually did have a lot more to do with that. Like I just thought they both did a phenomenal job. I really think the stinger, is the fact that like we mentioned last week, we had the same exact situation happen to them with wanting to vote Julie out, wanting to vote Drew out, and then the difference being she kept him in the dark. And
those 2 weeks swung the whole thing. Yeah.
Dropping that on him at the Final Tribal was huge. Like the fact that the jury could see like visually how he was blindsided. You know what I mean? Like this wasn't like, oh yeah, I told him later, but like the fact that like he gave a a physical reaction to this news, I think showed like, oh my gosh, she kept this from him. Like she really did have the upper hand. So I really think that was like a huge seller for a lot of people.
Carson tweeted immediately like, this is the reveal that won D the game. Just letting everybody know at that moment. Because it was interesting because some of the things that she said earlier in the Final Tribal almost felt contradictory to what she said later on. Where she's like, oh, I played with my heart fully, and it's like I can't really separate it from my brain. I didn't make any like strong strategic moves. I would say not telling him and telling Julie. Telling Julie's probably heart, but not telling Austin felt completely strategic. Like there were things like that where it's like, I don't know if it's necessarily the case, but whatever. That doesn't actually matter. Yeah, that was the swing. Those 2 weeks, that Emily vote and that Drew vote, were huge and really distinguished her game from everybody else.
Yeah. Yep. And I think even the final tribal or the final immunity and like almost taking away his own individual game by taking him to the final. You know what I mean? Because it's like we've seen winners. I think Erica 41, that was an example. She got taken to final tribal and ended up winning. So like that happens. Or that might have been the only time. I think I want to say Nick in David versus Goliath. That was the situation.
Probably.
I know he didn't do fire, and I'm pretty sure. But like, so like he could have won, but I think the fact that it was the two of them, and she was so like I think that really is like again another visual representation of like, no, you're here because of me. Like literally, you're here because of me, and you can't argue this fact right now. So like I think that was another just huge moment for her where it's like, yeah, his game almost doesn't exist outside of her game.
And yeah, just I feel like it's just the narrative that winning in fire, it doesn't have to be a final feather in your cap for you to win the game, which I feel like that's been a narrative that has been going for a bit. or at least it's been overvalued to me. And so
Yeah.
it's cool to see her just be like, no, my game's plenty good, and also I'm gonna make sure you don't get to show off, and that's what I'm gonna do.
I'm trying to remember who went to fire. I know Carson lost in fire last year.
I think
But
Jam Jam beat him.
who? It was Jam Jam?
I believe so,
Okay,
because it was Jam Jam, Carolyn, and who's the third?
Heidi. No, Heidi beat Carson.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. 100%. Right? Now you're making me
I don't remember
guess
that.
myself. I'm pretty sure. Oh my gosh, why can't I find? I'm trying to just breeze through and final tribal blah 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 blah. Heidi. Yep. Okay. Okay. See, so I
Heidi.
think like
Oh,
we've gotten,
Uh,
obviously Gabler did it. 42 was Marianne. She didn't do fire either, if I'm correct.
maybe not. Maybe it's
We've
not as big of a
shifted.
narrative as I think it is. But I feel
No,
like
no,
it's
no, no, no.
always a conversation.
I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think I think my point is I think like we're seeing, I think this has almost solidified that we're away from that because
Mm.
I think Winners at War was probably like the biggest version of that, where it
Peak,
was
yeah.
like you need to go to fire if you want to win the game. Like they literally said that. And so
And
I think
that was specifically because of Edge of Extinction, but people have taken that to be like, this
Mhm.
will win me the game if I do this. In
Right.
certain scenarios, it will. Like genuinely, if somebody, it would have been interesting if like Katura went up against D in fire or something like that. Like Katura won that final challenge and went up against D.
Mhm.
That's a big feather in your cap to go into final tribal, being the one that like took out D. Like it always has to be taking
Yeah.
somebody out.
Yeah, I actually really like the strategy of this though. And I'm pretty sure this was the same strategy 2 seasons ago when they stuck Gabler in fire against Jesse, where
Hmm.
it was less of like I'm gonna use fire for myself, but it was like I'm gonna use fire to strategically get the person I want out. Right? So in this
Mhm.
case, Dee really wanted Katura out, so she sent in Jake, feeling that he could beat her.
Hmm.
Which I think, I don't know. I feel like taking Austin to the final two was going to happen either way. So I don't know if that was her sole reason, but that's at least the reasoning she gave off. Is
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she was probably going to take him either way, but that was why she didn't. Because he asked to go in, kind of.
yeah,
He was like, I can beat either of them, but she's like, I'm not doing that.
yeah, and then Jake just, I feel like, it was just typical Jake at this point. Just like I need to make a move. I need something.
You
Give me
need to
this.
do something, please.
It's
Even
like
my
everything
idol play,
I've
which
done.
was supposed to be insane, it's got screwed up.
Is it time to talk about that vote?
I don't know. Do we want to keep going on Final Tribal, or do we want to jump to that?
I have so many thoughts on that vote.
Let's go that vote. We'll jump around. We'll keep doing that.
That was the most chaotic, unorganized. We had every single person that could receive a vote received a vote. There was
insane.
no trust, no communication with anyone. Okay, so let me recap you just to see how insane this is. So we have this Reba 3, right? Julie apparently doesn't trust the two of them, or she
Mhm.
doesn't trust Jake that he's being honest about his idol, right? Jake's telling people about his idol. So Julie is like, I'm going to go rogue from D and Austin. Austin and D are plotting, right? Because they're working together. Austin confesses to D, hey, I'm going to go rogue from you. I'm not going to vote with you. And then D goes, okay, fine, we'll vote separately because I can't vote for Julie.
Yeah.
Then the girls are like plotting to vote on Jake when the two, D and Julie, aren't telling Katura that they're actually voting for her, which
Mhm.
Julie didn't end up doing, right? So already there's like 3 layers of Julie's lie. Then last minute, Katura flips her vote because her and Jake were working together, but then she decided to go rogue, thinking the votes were going to be on her because Jake didn't say that he was potentially going to play an idol for her. So we ended up with everyone receiving a vote and Julie going home based on really no strategy.
Just an absolute catastrophe. And this is like textbook, like so much of Survivor is luck. Or there's like a good chunk of Survivor. Like this,
Yeah.
D probably should have gone this episode because all you need is just the Bello tribe members to be functional for once.
Yeah.
I think that this is representative of Bello being the most dysfunctional tribe we've ever seen. I really think that. For how long so many of their players lasted in the game and for them to never I don't know if they ever all got on the same thing like page at all.
Maybe Katura and Jake initiating like the Druvo last week, perhaps. Like that's the closest we've
Maybe.
seen.
But that wasn't them. That was the Reba people turning on him and kind of. I guess you could say Jake was the first one that. Said
Yeah,
it.
I mean the
Yeah.
episode initiated like Jake talking to Julie and then to Katura.
Mhm.
And there was a conversation last week between Katura and Jake being like, "Hey, we might need to stick this out together." And then I don't know. It's
And they were just like, or they refused to accept that the four Reba people were as tight as they were the entire time. It felt like, obviously they broke away a couple weeks ago, but for so long they were lockstep, and yet it just seemed to go over everybody's head, and no one realized that was the case. It's just crazy to me that there was so much distrust between people that there shouldn't have really been that much distrust between. Like, yes,
Yeah,
Katura
yeah.
and Bruce have their thing for sure, but then that just spawned this just disaster of a tribe. It's wild. to
Well,
me.
I think it's just like I think for their tribe specifically, like the wrong people went first. You know, I think Brando going early. I think he
Mhm.
would have been a very level-headed person. And I'm not saying they're all like I don't know, but like specifically like Bruce and Kendra, right? Those are two like wild cards that
Yeah,
just
and
those are two people hard to work with.
that's not even to say that they're bad players. We've seen
No,
good players be on dysfunctional tribes for sure, but their inability to trust each other.
I think the comparison to like a Kendra might be like a Sifu, right? And
Mhm.
Rebo is just smart about like let's go for Sifu first because
Yeah,
this is someone
out
that
of here.
right like let's cut the fat now so we can just keep our core. Um, yeah, and the thing is like I I don't know. I'm still very confused on like where the big issue was here. Because like obviously I think like Katura should have stuck with D, right? Like that would have
Mhm.
been like just the move. But at the same time like I don't blame her because Jake only let her in on half the plan, right? Like
Yeah.
she was believing his lie to everyone that I'm going to play the idol for herself and she correctly assumed that people were voting for her. So in some ways like she did call like, "Oh, I'm going to get votes, not Jake." And he's going to
Mhm.
play his idol for himself because that's what he told me. So like she almost trusted him too much. So I don't know. Like I go back and forth on like, it doesn't really matter who's like at bigger fault here, but it's just like yeah, he really should have told her. She really should have trusted the plan. And then I don't know. Like if you're Julie or not Julie, sorry, if you're D and you know that your showmance is voting for your number one, like, did she have that much faith that Couture was going home? Because that also feels foolish, you know? Like, there's just
Mhm.
at that point, if you're like, hey, Austin's voting for Julie, well, I guess at that point you can't really do anything because you can't pull in Couture to vote out Austin, you know? I don't know. It's
Yeah.
there's just so much here.
I feel like she's okay with Julie going home if that's what has to happen at that stage of the game. Like I feel like that would be my mentality because Julie is a threat at the end. But yeah, it's just so much of the logic was just so confusing. And yeah, like, well, how do you just leave your game to chance and just be like, well, I'm just gonna go rogue and do this, and you're just like, okay, cool, like whatever. And even listening to the conversation that Jake and Katura had before they went to tribal, there was no doubt in my mind that Jake was playing that idol for Katura. I genuinely like just based on the way that they were talking, it felt like they had edited around him actually telling her, "I'm playing the idol for you." But it was like so much of like the I trust you, you trust me, like we can do this together, all that sort of rhetoric. And so I was convinced D was out of there, and I was upset going into that tribal. I was like, I don't see a way out of this except for everybody just going rogue, which is like It's an outrageous time to do that. And maybe it's crazy just because all of them happen to do it at the same time. Like if one person goes rogue in a tribal like that, it's not that crazy. It's like, oh, that might have been kind of dumb, or it might have been really smart. Like Katura's flip might have saved her potentially if it hadn't gone the way that it gone. But since everybody went rogue, since nobody was on the same page, it just looks like such a pile of crap.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. I think you just nailed it. Where it's like if one thing changes differently, then each one of them could have had a strategic move. Because let's say that Julie doesn't go rogue, and she sticks with the plan and votes for Katura. If he doesn't play his idol for her, then you're sitting at 2 votes. So then it's like, okay, I need to trust that somebody's going to vote for Julie. Well, I guess then she could have voted for D. Wait. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like I could talk forever about this because it's fascinating, but you know what I mean? I just think like if one thing goes different, somebody there has a good play. But I think this was like the perfect order of events where all of them look a little foolish.
Yeah, and I think it's the differences in information that each person knew. Like Jake told Katura and Austin that he had an idol. And I don't know if he told Austin strategically knowing that he would tell D and that would get back to Julie probably.
That's
But
what
why
I
would you
felt
ever
like.
tell Austin that? Like that seems like a crazy move. But he never took credit for that in any sort of confessional. So I feel like we can't assume that. He actually thought he had Austin on his side.
Yeah.
So he told those two. Austin told everyone about the idol, obviously. Katura, those 3 were all going to vote for Jake. Like, there was just it was a complicated 5 and, like, deciding who was going to go. For sure. And then the idol just threw everything into flux as well. So it's just, yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, I think the person that makes the least amount of sense to me is Austin in this situation. Because his vote for Julie, at least from what we saw, it wasn't discussed with anyone else. As far as like, because everyone else at least knew that there was probably going to be 2 votes with the way they were voting, right?
Mm-hmm.
D assumed she would be a part of 2 votes on Katura. Jake assumed he was going to be a part of 2 votes on D. Austin, he knew where the votes were going. He knew who was voting for Katura. He knew that votes might be, but like he purposely knew that his, you know what? Does that make sense? Like I can't follow his logic. To me, that is the weirdest part of it.
From his perspective, Jake is voting for Julie.
Oh,
like that's Jake's plan is to play the idol for himself and vote for Julie, because Jake never updated him that the plan switched to D.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay,
so
that makes sense.
His perspective was like, he might have even just been like, I want to make sure that I vote correctly, because up until that point, let me check, he voted correctly on every single vote other than the Emily vote.
Real quick about that.
Well, not quite.
Well, Drew's vote.
Drew's vote, obviously. So maybe he just wanted to try to get that one right.
Real quick about that,
her name.
They kept on referring to Katura never voting incorrectly tonight. They mentioned it a couple times. And
you
said
that last week.
And you fact checked. I fact checked before I got on here because I was like, did Tony mess up when he read it last? But no, I don't know why they're saying that. Did you catch that tonight?
Yeah, that was one of the fact checks that I did too before we started. I was like,
what am I missing? Because
week.
It's not even the canceled votes. It's not even the Caleb vote. It's not. It's like the Kelly vote, right? It's the. I mean that's the biggest one where she voted for Jake instead of Kelly.
Everyone was wrong on the Julie, so maybe that one doesn't really count as much.
Yeah, so she had 2 that got canceled out. But one, like the Kelly vote, was just so I was like, what am I missing here? Why do they keep on giving her credit for having like a perfect voting record?
Unless that was one of the ones that like, she was strategically voting for someone else as a backup, so it wasn't her.
But does that still count as an incorrect vote?
Yes, I mean, well, I wouldn't say that. D's vote on Julie when Emily got voted out. I wouldn't count that as an incorrect vote. Well, I guess it's technically an incorrect vote, but
Sure, I guess
an
it depends on your
intentional incorrect
definition.
vote.
Yeah. So like, were you into? Yeah. Okay.
But I want to be clear. I'm giving Katura a lot of leeway here. She definitely doesn't have a perfect voting record. I don't know why that was.
No, not even. And
conversation.
I'm a big Katura fan. You know this all season, but she did not have a perfect vote. Like, not even close.
It was a surprisingly strong one. And even looking at Jake's, because I looked at Jake's as well. And like for the most part, he was in the know of who was getting voted for. Except for Caleb. Caleb was his big miss, and then obviously everybody was wrong on the last one. But like other than that, he was pretty on the money, which like that matters. You're being brought in. But I didn't get to make the decision for any of those except for maybe you could give him Drew.
The interesting thing is that both Austin and D voted for Jake instead of Bruce. But wasn't that strategic, like to split the vote?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think
Because
I
that
think
was that was when he didn't play as idol.
I think we just need to stop like viewing that, I think, as like a measurement of like a good, because like they split the vote. So like if we're in Survivor, right, and we're going for like a 4-3-1 or something, is there arguments on who votes for who because you want a good voting record? You know what I mean? Like, is that something they think about? It's like, well, I don't want to be I don't want to vote for the backup plan because at the end of the game you might say you have a perfect voting record.
I feel like it was said on Big Brother this last season. I can't remember who it was, but it was like I knew what the plan was every week, whether or not I voted that way. Like I think that matters more than your actual vote. If you know
I think that's
the
a
plan,
much better way of saying it.
then you get that credit. But it is something like if it's one of those things where if you frame it correctly and you said I voted correctly every time and people buy it, you get those points.
And maybe they just forgot. Like, honestly, like, maybe, like, being there on the island, maybe Katura just said, like, oh, yeah, I voted Kelly out, too. And they're just like, oh.
We didn't read the rest of them, I guess.
I would really like that if you just roll with it. Just don't even.
I love it.
Let's talk a little bit more about Katura. We don't have to do a lot, because we know that you love talking about her. I was a little surprised. Like again, I love her gameplay. I've been defending it. They really thought she was going to be a threat in Final Tribal. Like that was the biggest fear to D. It felt like she kind of replaced Julie in that way. Where like that's the narrative we saw with Julie for weeks. It's like, oh, if she gets to Final Tribal, people like her, they respect her. She's got people on the jury. She'll have a good speech. And then that kind of like, after Julie was gone, that kind of became Katura. Like, she's like, oh, she's well respected by the jury. She's played a different game than us. So I was just fascinated by that, where it was like, oh, Katura is like the big threat that like we need to get out and fire.
I wonder if part of it is you want to like talk up the person you voted out just for the value of like, I voted that person out, so I should get credit for that. More credit because they're such a great player. But yeah, that was making me nervous. And I think it was probably partially the production of it, talking her up as a big threat so that her going out at 4 was more meaningful. But D told her to her face that I think you're a big threat and then reiterated it at Final Tribal. So that was definitely a conversation and a storyline going through. And yeah, I just don't see that much from Katura's game myself, and so it is crazy to me. There's some. No, I'm not saying she didn't do anything. I want to be clear, but I don't see the actual threat. I would have been surprised. I would have been annoyed if she had gotten votes at Final Tribal, unless she just had this crazy way to spin her game.
I mean, we've talked about this every week. I think the game was there personally. But I think this almost confirms like. I think if, let's say, like, D goes at 4 or something, which couldn't have happened, but, like, let's say, right, in a situation where, like, Katura is sitting there with, like, Jake and Austin, I think there's a high chance she could have won based on that. And I think, like, if that's true, if, like, that's how the jury's perceiving her, which I think outside of Bruce, like she does have that connection. I don't know. It's just like it's something that I think I kind of talked myself into because I liked her so much and like trying to convince myself how she has a good game, but then like to actually see that
Mhm.
confirmed, I was like, wait a minute. Like really? I thought she was gonna just slide to final tribal, right? And maybe get like a vote or two or maybe none.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's like, oh, she probably had a chance? I don't know. It felt like it came out of nowhere.
There's definitely something to the majority of the jury being people who were like on a tribe with her, or a good chunk of the jury being people that were on a tribe with her and
Now it
know
didn't
her
help
pretty
Jake.
well. Yeah, it didn't help Jake, which it says something, but we don't need to get into it. I feel like we talked poorly of him already. There's definitely something to be said of that aspect for sure. But beyond that, yeah, I feel like a lot of it was for production, and a lot of it is just to be like, hey, taking this person out is a big move. And taking credit for that, I guess. I don't know. If D had somehow gotten eliminated at Final Four, I think I would have had to look back and be like, okay, what has each of these people done? But if Katura won, I don't know if I would have been that surprised, honestly.
I think she beats Jake pretty easily, especially now seeing how Jake got 0 votes. Austin,
But
I
seeing
think, would be
Austin's
the
final tribal.
yes, but it's tough because like without D being there, I think Austin would have got most of or all that credit, right? So
Mhm.
then you're not judging like because I think with Austin and D it was like these two people played the same game, who played it better?
Mhm.
Without D, I think it's like we have two exact opposite games here. So how do we judge this?
Mhm.
And that's the tricky part, and I don't know how you would do that. So yeah, I don't know. I think Austin maybe wins that one, but I don't know. It truly, like I said this last week, but I think out of this final 5 that we walked in with, like even Julie, like I think everyone had an opportunity, like at some point. I think in
Mhm.
hindsight now it's easy to say like, oh yeah, Jake never really had a chance, but like this episode presented him like he had a chance to us.
And literally all it took was one swing vote for that vote, that final 5 vote to change.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was one vote for everybody, and then just 2 for Julie. Like one vote swing could have completely changed who was left in the game, and it would have shifted everything. Honestly,
100%, and I, feel bad. I feel like Katura's really gonna be beating herself up because like she literally votes for D, like she just voted out the winner, right? And then who knows?
mm-hmm.
But I think like for everyone, like if Austin would have, well, I guess he couldn't have voted for Katura because that would have got canceled out. I guess he was, yeah. I guess Katura's the only one because if Julie had to stick with a plan, she would have voted for Katura. That would have been wrong. If
Mhm.
Austin was like, so like I guess them going rogue, if anything, just downplayed the idol because the idol was not worth much then.
Mm-hmm. Honestly,
What a
cancel that one vote
fascinating
that didn't
tribal.
ultimately matter. Yeah,
It's just an all time. It's an all like. I can't even begin to analyze it yet. I'm gonna need like a couple days. So the fact that like we're just talking about it right after it happened, and I mean, there's so much going on with it.
I think I have a fear that if I went on Survivor, I would look a lot like Jake. Like I think I would just, I would like have all the knowledge and feel like I know what I'm doing, and just like get no foothold and just not play well most of the game and have like decent reads. I think he had decent reads a lot of the time, but just
Well,
not
yeah,
be able to do anything.
the
with it.
read is it's probably me, which was right. So that's an easy read.
Yeah, decent read. I don't know what the problem is.
I don't know if I said it here, but I've been saying all season that my fear is that I would be a lot like Drew if I were to play Survivor. Just overly confident, not very empathetic, maybe like a Emily too, just very like
Bust
guys.
out a literary reference like
Well,
Damocles' sword.
maybe not that one. I could bust out some movie references perhaps.
Oh, I can see
But
that. I mean, like this is like the plot of The Lobster. Jeff's just like, what? Excuse me.
yeah, Austin and Dee, they found their person, so now the rest of us are just gonna turn into goats.
I was watching Lobster. I was thinking Lobster earlier today. I don't know why. It's a good movie.
It's because he's got a new one coming out. That's why.
Oh, does he? I didn't know that at all.
Poor Things? You don't know about Poor Things?
No.
Ah, it comes out this weekend. Go watch it. Don't watch it with your
Alright.
family. It's
No,
not a
I
not a
won't
not a
mess
family
with it.
holiday movie.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Jake breaking the challenge. I thought that was just
So on
hilarious.
brand. He was just stomping, and Jeff was like, "Hey, if you break that, you're done." And he just, "I don't care, Jeff. I'm just gonna keep stomping." I would feel like I would take that as a warning and stop stomping.
He just kept stopping. He looked like a GTA character, just whoa, whoa.
Granted, D was pretty clearly she would have to really throw it to because had Katura fallen at that point too? Didn't they all fall?
I don't think Katura did. I think Katura was just slow. I don't remember though. I don't remember her falling. I know Austin fell a lot. Like,
I'm pretty sure Katura did, but I don't know if it was before that or not. Yeah, Austin fell a lot
because I
he
mean,
as she was finishing, she was able to really, really slow down and
yeah,
take her time, and I think that's because Katura had dropped.
yeah. No, it wasn't even close. And I think, y- it's tough because like that's a challenge where it's like D was literally perfect. So I think
And
the
was
only way to
leading regardless, yeah.
right, the only way to beat her was to be faster. Because
Mhm.
like sometimes in those challenges you can play the slow and steady and hope they drop and lose the lead, but like she wasn't dropping. um,
After
another
she won it, I literally did the like double fist pump in the air. I was like, yes.
another challenge that she benefited by her feet.
Yeah, honestly, that's why they mentioned it. She's got good balance, dude.
I've been saying, dude, her
Wait,
feet.
but
That's
aren't her feet bigger? Wouldn't that be like an issue of potentially hitting the rope in this scenario?
no, bigger feet are easier to walk with.
Oh, right.
Why do you think basketball players all have big feet? It makes them good. Gives them
They're 7
hops.
feet tall.
She was just
Oh,
going
good.
right.
Yep.
Footwork.
Hop, skip, and a jump, no more, no less.
Basketball players don't have tiny feet.
Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that.
It's a rule of thumb.
What else of this episode stood out? I'm
Ooh.
looking through the notes now. I feel like we covered a lot of it.
Did.
Dude, we talked about everyone pretty much. We didn't say much about Julie. I don't know. I feel like kind of just went out on a whimper, so there's not really much
Mm-hmm.
to analyze other than she got really unfortunate that Couture just decided to flip.
Go rogue, yeah.
She
I love it.
She got screwed that Katura's rogue beat out her rogue. Well, Julie was double rogue because her initial plan was to vote for Jake. Then her going rogue was like, ooh, let's switch to Katura. And then she went rogue from that back to Jake. This tribal
What an
breaks my
animal.
brain. It literally breaks
so
my
bad,
brain.
dude. If you were like, okay, here are the 5 people, who did they each vote for? I don't think I'd be able to answer. I don't think I would know.
No, absolutely
'Cause
not.
So hard to remember, like, all right, did this person do something that was decent for the game or just awful? Like, did they make a poor decision? I don't remember.
It's like, so you're telling me D turned on Katura there. Oh, but then Julie wanted to vote for Jake. But then Austin also wanted to vote for Julie. And like,
Nathan, I got a question for you.
what's your question?
Expressed from coworker Nick himself. And I don't want to get into a deep analysis of this. I just want to know how it strikes you when I say it out loud, okay?
I won't be pulling the Drew.
D.
Wait, was this targeted as at me, or like?
No,
was
he just
this...
mentioned it to me the other day.
Oh,
He was like,
okay.
"Hey, I think." He messaged me and said, "I think if D wins, she's a top 10 winner all time."
I did see he tweeted something similar.
Did you tweet that? How does that strike you when I just say it?
It's I don't initially disagree. I think I would definitely need to take a good hard look. Actually, let me pull up my notes app because we did do this. We did rank our Survivor winners maybe like 3 years ago at this point. I don't know when
We
that
did
was.
do that.
I just know because it was at my old apartment, so that's the only time frame I can go off of. This note is from February of 2021, so almost 3 years ago. But this is tough because we did like individual games. So I have I have both of Tony's games in the top 10. You know what I mean? so
Mhm.
that's a little difficult.
Oh yeah, I guess.
I think she would slip in there.
I think there's a good chance. I think I can at least say that she wouldn't be she would be welcome there. Just from off the top of my head, if I said D played a top 10 game, I think I'm in on that.
Yeah, I'm looking towards like the bottom 10 of my list. I saw Sarah, I saw Yul, I think Todd was somewhere there. So I think like among those. Yeah, because I think like she really didn't have like a lot of faults, I think, throughout the whole season. And I think like things that I look for in like Survivor winners is I think having the control throughout the season, right? Like how much of like the way that the season went, how much of that was because of you? How was your final tribal? And did you really utilize multiple elements of the game? You know, and I think she did. She utilized the social. She had that alliance. She also commanded the alliance when needed. She also, you know, kind of sat back when it was like someone else take charge. I want to blend in right now. Like she was a target, you know, 5 weeks ago, and then somehow just no one talked about her again for a couple weeks. She won the most immunity this season, right? With 4?
Yep.
Or 3? 4?
3. She tied Austin with 3.
Okay, yeah, so that's pretty good. I think the only thing that like she doesn't have, which is probably like my least favorite strategy, is like the advantages.
Mhm.
You know, like if you look at the winners who win off of advantages, those are some of my least favorite winners.
Yeah. It was
Looking
just
at
straight up
looking at you,
Survivor.
Ben.
Oh, you don't like Ben?
Just not my favorite way to win a game. You know, that's all. So the fact that she did it without it, you know, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I'm not going to do this because it's way too much work and it's not worth it. I'm curious how
I
early
already
I mentioned-
overanalyzed this, didn't I? I already
Oh
went
no,
too
I
deep.
was just going to say, I mean, you pulled out the list, but anyways,
I'm
curious
Drew.
how
I'm
early-
telling you.
Because I remember the first episode we recorded, you were like, D, I don't even remember her. And I was like, I remember D, I feel like I like her. And I'm curious how early I was like, no, I'm really in on this girl. Because for the first few episodes, she wasn't like a big character, I don't think. But
Yeah,
there was something about her early on that I was like, I think I'm in on her. Like there's something there.
No, you're absolutely right. Let me just quick look up confessional count, because from what I remember early on, and it would be fascinating to look up like our early episodes. But yeah, because like I'm not kidding. Like her feet, that was the thing that like really stuck out, because that was one of her first like our personal connection to her. You know, because I think it's always tough because like we had the yellow tribe that just went back to back to back tribal, right? So like we expressed that like early on, where it's like we don't really get to know these other people because we're so focused on this tribe. And then I think when it went to red tribe, we saw a lot of Drew, right? And then we saw a lot of Austin because Austin found the idol.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting because I think early on D was in some ways kind of more a part of like this core 4 of like the Reba. And so I think for me, I think that was probably what took a couple weeks, is because like it took a while for her to stand out within like the show itself.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if I rewatched the first episode, if there was a specific confessional that I was like, oh, that's a winner right there, and that's why I'm on to that. But yeah, she's a great winner. I think she would fit as a top 10 winner, but I don't know if I'd actually put her there if I really thought about it.
You want to rank all our winners right now?
No. I want you to rate this season on a scale of 1 to 10.
1 to 10. I love that.
I thought about doing best season ever, worst season ever, but I knew you would refuse to do that.
Yes, because life exists more than on a yes or no scale. 1 through 10. That's tough. I don't know. Maybe like a 7 or 8. Probably 8.
The early
Maybe
season
7.
definitely was tough. And then
It
there was
was
that middle
real
area
tough.
where it's just like for like 3 or 4 weeks straight, they just didn't have like a normal week where it's just like, all right, now everybody has their vote, everybody's ready to go. Like it was constantly like half the tribe doesn't have their vote, and now we're gonna split, and now half the tribe doesn't have their vote again, or they have to earn it back. Like there was all of that funky stuff. But I think I'd be comfortable with saying like a 7 as well.
I
So
think this might be my favorite of the new era, 41 on. I don't
think
know if
just
that's
what.
crazy.
How much of that is influenced by such a great winner, do you think?
I mean, I think that makes the season, though, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like you have to have a good winner.
Yeah.
Like,
I still think 43 from episode 1 to 13 is like it was like a top 10 season for me at that point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you had a lot going on. I also did really like last season. I did.
Last season was good.
I don't know. It's not even because like
Carolyn, Jam Jam.
I don't even dislike Jam Jam as a winner. I think he was a good
No.
winner, but it's just something like it kind of like it started to go up and then just like almost peak but didn't quite and then just kind of maintained the rest of the season. You know, and
Mhm.
that's the best way I can
Mhm.
describe it. And but then again, like I don't know, like what was the peak of this season? You know, was it probably the Emily and Drew back to back? Like those 2 weeks were very exciting. Um, I
Yeah, I would say that's probably the peak.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I just think like if you peak later on, I'm probably gonna like your season a little bit better. Because I want something. Like if I'm gonna rewatch a season, I want to know that I'm gearing up towards something. And so
It's
for like
so
a
much more
season
memorable.
that like peaks early on, you know, like pre-merge or something, then it's like, oh cool, now I have to watch another this many episodes of not as exciting things.
Mhm. Yeah, that's when things usually get boring, and so if there's something exciting there at the end, because usually you can just coast off of a bunch of craziness happening early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
yeah,
I think this season, I think would reward a lot of rewatches. You know, again, maybe just skip through the first like 4 weeks. Honestly,
yeah.
looking at
Skip
Hannah,
week 1 and
Brandon,
4 at least.
Sabaya, Sean, like whatever.
4/6 or 2/3 of the Lulu tribe you just don't need to know.
Literally, it's insane. You know, because like you're looking like then it's the Brando vote, which is fine, I guess. I don't know, whatever. But then
Mhm.
it's like the J Maya, which is like a all-time tribal council.
Mhm.
Then we like split up and then get rid of Sifu and Caleb, which you know both have something. Then there's the Kelly blind side. Kendra was probably a fiddler, but then there's Bruce, Emily, Drew, and then you know, so it's like there's
Yeah.
a lot of memorable moments. Like there's probably 4 or 5 things in this season that I would cite as like, oh, remember when this happened?
Let me put it this way: J Maya on probably a 9, 8 or a 9, honestly.
Wait, what? J Maya.
From like the J Maya vote on, it's probably like an 8 or
I did
9.
not understand. I was like, J Maya on. What do you mean, J Maya off on? What do you say? I didn't.
From
Okay,
that
got
point
it. Got it. Yes,
to the
yes.
rest, everything. The first 5 episodes. I mean, there was some decent stuff in there, sure, but it was our first swap in the new era, which was exciting. More than just one person.
Yeah.
But the 2 quits really bring it down. Brando wasn't overly exciting. So, yeah, from J Maya and basically through the merge. Yeah, that's literally
Mhm.
the merge is very, very good.
I had to convince a bunch of people tonight that Brandon didn't quit week 2. They kept saying like, "Oh, 3 people quit." It's like, "No, it was 2." They're like, "No, it was 3." It's like, "Guys, Brandon didn't quit." They're like, "Yeah, he did." It's like, "No, he didn't. He actually got voted."
He was
They're like,
trying to stay.
they're like, "Okay, but like technically he quit, right?" And then I was like, "No, he like like people were so like they just grouped him in with these other." And I'm like, "That's fair, but I don't know."
And it's tough with him because I genuinely think in a post merge game, I think he'd be a player. I think
Yeah,
he'd be doing some good, like socially and strategically. I think he was very strong. He's just never, never, never gonna win any sort of challenge.
right. And that's always the balancing act of like Survivor. You know, like being a physical threat is beneficial early on, and then
Mm-hmm.
not so much once you are playing individually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good show. Fun show.
Love it.
Thoughts on season 46? I don't know. I never get much out of these previews.
I didn't see a single person that I was like excited to watch.
Someone said that we were watching with she said I think we're due for a dud season. I said, oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah, this season. I thought this season's cast was really boring early on. I think you remember like the first 4 episodes. I think I was saying I was like, these guys stink, and then it picked up. I think I'm gonna have the same vibe early on next season. I think we'll be like, oh, this is a bunch of.
It was fascinating because the preview almost showed nothing on the island. It was all like audition tapes, stuff from their homes. I don't think we've ever seen that, and I don't pay a lot of attention to these previews anyways. Like I don't really analyze or like. I honestly probably won't even like look at the cast list until the week of.
No, I don't look until after I watch the first episode.
It just that stuff like doesn't really interest me, the preseason. But I don't know. I've never really seen a preview like that, so that was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, but hey, it's the new era.
Question for you, and then we can wrap this up.
All right.
Because it's late and we're recording this after the finale, same night. Been a while since we've done this. Who on this season would you like to see back if we did like an all-star returner season?
Let's see.
I think 3 people for sure, but I could probably bump it up to like 7 or 8. Like,
yeah, I think D, Drew, Emily, Kelly for sure. Those are the first 4 that stand out to me. I'd see Caleb again. Honestly,
my biggest 3
would I be okay with Bruce again? I would.
Yeah, my biggest 3 were Caleb, Kelly, and Emily. I guess I didn't even consider D. I don't know why, because she won, so I was like, oh, but yes, no, D too. Even towards the end, like Jake made me smile every now and then. I don't, I don't think I'd want to see him on another season, but
I'd like to see him on another season where he's not just a sad puppy the whole time.
Right. Yeah, and there's a couple people too.
A shot at him necessarily, but like that was just kind of the role he filled. Is like everything he tried failed.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but I don't know. There's just like a lot of people on this season that I feel like more so than other seasons this era. I think most people on this season, I think, walked out kind of with a good reputation for the most part. There aren't a lot of duds. I feel like everyone contributed something, and they all fit like a very niche archetype. And I think there's a lot of people that's like, yo, man, that'd be fun to see them again.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we have a returner season dialed up relatively soon, because there's also like 6 seasons into the 30s that we just never got to see anybody return for, which bums me out.
Yeah, I mean, I think post 34, the only one we got were Ben and Nick and Wendell for winners.
And then were anyone from 38, any of those returners from?
No, those were all early. Yeah. So yeah,
Those
I
are
mean,
all
there's a
33
lot of, yeah, because I mean, like really, season 40 would probably have been that, but hey, that was a great season. But yes, there are a lot of people from the past probably 12 seasons now that would have been on if this was a, different thing. They got to do it, right? They got to do it
They
soon.
have to. That's one of the beauties of Survivor, is getting to see people play again.
Right. And I've said this before, but like Survivor, I feel like just does it so well. It's not like Big Brother, like returning seasons are kind of the worst, especially if you just throw in like 1 or 2. But like Survivor, it feels pretty balanced. Like we've seen, good returners. Has there been like a bad season of returning players? I don't know if there have been.
Love Fan versus Favorites 2.
That's true.
That's half and half. I feel like
those favorites
Leaders
were
is
not
decent.
favorites. Like that's
No, they weren't.
that
Well, I would
was an
argue some of the
insane
favorites from the
cast.
first Fan versus Favorites weren't favorites.
No, but I mean, like when you're throwing in, Brandon and Philip Shepard and freaking what was her name with Cochran? The mom,
Dawn.
just the most boring person ever. Like,
Dawn.
just
I think that's who it is.
oh yeah. Okay. Well, should we wrap this up? I think let's do.
We should wrap it up. No, I have one more thing that I need to say.
Of course, yes.
There's something in the last couple seasons where these people feel like they need to drop their jaw and like over exaggerate their response to things. And I'm over it. I think it's annoying and feels
Are you talking about Kendra?
like almost never feel Kendra, Jake. I got people. The one girl from 43, I can't remember her name. You were a fan of her.
43.
Can't remember her name. There were a couple because when Jesse pulled out his idol, everyone was like, and like open their mouth, and it's like I'd want to just like touch their tongue and just like teach them like that's not like keep your mouth closed or I'm gonna touch your tongue.
Who was I?
I know
a
it's
fan
weird.
of on 43.
I can't.
Ellie?
Remember. Nope.
Ellie was my girl.
She was. As soon as I said that, I was like, he's gonna think I'm talking about Ellie, but I'm not talking about Ellie.
Well, the only other girls that would have been
Janine.
there.
You're a big fan of Janine.
Janine? I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember Janine.
Yeah, you do. You love Janine.
I honestly don't know what you're talking about. Okay, actual last thing. Unless you have another last thing after this.
No, but that's important. Like I need to like. No one genuinely their jaw drops at things like that.
No, but it makes for
And
good.
even Kelly was doing it. Kelly's my favorite person on this season, and I was still like, Kelly, keep your mouth shut, please. And not like don't talk, just like don't do that.
Kelly was very vocal all season on Tribal Council. Her and Caleb.
Mhm.
Like I feel like every
It
Tribal
was a bit
Council.
much, but I like her enough that I didn't complain.
But Kendra needs to cut it out. Yes.
Yeah, Kendra needs to get out of here.
My last thing is I actually did like the lawyer payoff, especially when Julie told Katurah to go to law school, and Katurah was
Mhm.
so confused. I saw a great tweet. It was just like this is just like the perfect moment of two lawyers who are hiding that they're lawyers, and like so one lawyer who's hiding she's a lawyer tells another lawyer that's hiding that she's a lawyer that to go to law school. Like it was just I don't know.
Yeah,
Very funny, and I don't know. The payoff was pretty good for all of them.
it was pretty decent. I'll give you that.
It's just
Jake hid that he was a prosecutor and said that he was a public defender. That was huge. Golly, I didn't realize he did that. And no
I
one
didn't
did.
either.
Everybody was like, "Oh, you lied too." Nobody realized.
Oh man, yeah, no, because I those payoffs are like, I get why you lie about certain occupations, but I think they always expect it to be a big moment. But I think the fact that there were 3 of them actually made it like a decent moment as compared to like other times it's happened. But yeah, just Julie going, "Hey, you should go to law school." Katurah goes, "Huh? Like, wait, what? What'd you just say?"
He must have expressed like, "Oh yeah, I've been interested in going to law school."
Well, I think she
I don't
did.
know.
I think it was a callback when the 3 of them were on the beach, because you remember there was the 3 lawyer talk on the beach a couple weeks ago, where
Yeah, and she's,
again,
like,
and they
asking
were
questions.
they were asking questions to Jake because Jake just didn't hide it, and then I think Katurah hinted like, "Oh yeah, I thought about it," So then I think
Mhm.
Julie then being like, "Wait a minute, she doesn't know I did go to law school. Hey, you should go to law school." Just it's so good.
Killing it, dude.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening up until this point. For this whole season, we'll probably be back for 46 after we take a good time off, since we've been doing this weekly for months. August. That one.
Jeez. Yeah, it's been since August. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have some time off.
Hey, maybe we'll jump on Christmas Eve and record a recap of the reindeer games. No,
We're not gonna do that.
you should watch though. It's actually it's
I
not
wanna
the
get caught
best,
up.
but it's like it's entertaining.
How many
It's-
episodes are there?
There are
4 a
5
week?
out. No,
Oh,
only
there's
3 a
5
week.
out.
There's 6 total in the whole season. It's easy
Oh,
watch.
easy.
Easy watch. The format is essentially the challenge. Like that's what it is.
Oh, cool.
Like you get eliminated by going head to head. Like it's it's a good structure, and the competitions are actually balanced, and yeah, it's fun. Like, it's fun.
That's super cool.
Anyways, for more episodes of That Came Out Personal, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, at NGAPPod, at NGAPPod. I'm Nathan. This is Tony. Hey, happy holidays, and we'll see you next season.
6 seasons, 2 pals, 1 survivor.